Denver's less than a week away from looser COVID restrictions if we can just keep keeping our droplets to ourselves. Fighting human trafficking in Colorado starts with knowing what to look for. A trooper who spotted it shares the story. One of the small-time traders who took on Wall Street tells us how they did it.
Just like anything, like you get on Reddit and you kind of fall down some wormholes, and then all of a sudden you're trading GameStop in a short squeeze.
The juice was worth the squeeze until hedge funds muscled them out today. And they are the Coloradans who hear 99 problems, and their mental health is now one. Taking care of those who take care of us. Next. It is hard to care about a crime that you don't think is happening in your community, so I'll just say it. Human trafficking is happening in Colorado. Victims are being moved on our highways. A state trooper told our Anusha Roy how he managed to rescue a 14-year-old girl.
I overheard a bolo aired on, which is Be on the Lookout.
It was February.
Suspected in human trafficking.
And Trooper Brent Crampton was on Highway 287 in southeast Colorado when he saw a car that matched the description and did what he has done so many times before.
With any traffic stop, you never really know what to expect.
Inside the car was the driver and a 14-year-old girl.
We all have a picture of what a normal road trip looks like.
But it wasn't until the driver was in custody that the young girl felt like it was safe enough to talk. She had been reported missing out of Texas a few weeks before.
She told me she actually had ran away from home. She was open about the reasons why she ran away from home and what happened that prevented her from being able to go back home and where she was picked up. Really heartbreaking.
She is one of 12 people CSP rescued last year from human trafficking, roughly 10 more people than they usually help.
We frequently encounter it on the highways as people are being transported from one location to another.
State Patrol is crediting training, including a newer 8-hour intensive course, and wants to spread the knowledge as far as possible, knowing that in the past, they themselves may have missed something.
Before I had the training, I am concerned that there may well have been circumstances in the past where I allowed a vehicle to go down the road that had I had the training, I would not have done so. And that's kind of a haunting feeling.
It's what's so haunting about human trafficking, because victims can walk right before you.
I know they stayed at a local hotel, and actually the person at the counter was like, I didn't even know anything was wrong. And you really don't. You have to really look towards the deeper side.
The young girl was reunited with her family. The case against the driver is ongoing, and her impact on the trooper permanent.
We have the hotline that you can both call and text on the screen there. And we've talked about this before. This is a crime that can be really tricky to get specific numbers about, but we know it's happening here because troopers doing something as routine as pulling a person over for speeding ended up realizing that the driver had an outstanding warrant and then found 2 girls in that car. And after building trust with them, realized that they were being trafficked. And Kyle, they were able to get them connected to resources and ultimately get them to a place that was safe.
Boy, and you wonder how many more terrible situations could be avoided if there was additional training.
Yeah, I mean, that is the critical point to all of this. And that newer training that the State Patrol was doing, they actually started it before COVID, had to hit the pause button because of the pandemic, and they've started to back up. But, you know, it's not just about law enforcement. They're talking as well to the hospitality industry, the hotels, motels, hospitals as well. Law enforcement have a lot of their own units dedicated specifically to human trafficking, and CSP is just one of many people that are working on these trainings.
Very important stuff, Anusha. Appreciate you bringing that to us. If Denver can keep its COVID-19 case rate stable or better over the next 6 days, well, then at that point, businesses can start applying for looser restrictions, more indoor capacity, stuff like that. Denver couldn't implement the state's 5-star program even once it got approved because the case rates were too high. So what the state's going to do is they're only going to allow 500 businesses to apply for looser restrictions at first. Obviously, thousands of businesses will be interested.
One reason is equity. As we get the data in pretty immediately, starting next week, we will be able to determine what industries are underrepresented. Are there any neighborhoods that are left behind of our 78 neighborhoods? We'll be able to see if the application process needs to be adjusted and if it's created barriers for some of our communities, especially communities of color. We'll be able to provide that technical outreach.
The city plans on having a second round of applications about 2 weeks after the first. The slow rolling approach is also going to allow the city of Denver to watch to see if looser restrictions for businesses results in a surge of cases. Let's look at the numbers. Some encouraging news today. 644 people are currently hospitalized in Colorado with COVID-19. That's down 18 patients from the day before, down 68 patients from this time a week ago. Our 7-day positivity rate is back under the 5% threshold where we want it to be, 4.98%. Think about it, less than 2 months ago, our positivity rate was averaging around 12.5%. So that is huge in terms of showing how the prevalence of the virus kind of out and around in Colorado is being held largely in check. 7.1% of Colorado's population has now received 1 dose of the vaccine. That's a bit more than 410,000 people. 109,000 of our neighbors have received both doses. Colorado's State Health Department is hiring people to work on its new vaccine question hotline. They're trying to prioritize hiring Coloradans for these jobs. Right now, they have 35 folks answering phones from their homes in state, and they've got another 29 operators who are working out of state. We asked them where the operators are located because we heard from next viewer named Barb all the way out in Montezuma County. She called the hotline, and she said the very nice man on the hotline told her that he saw no evidence of a Montezuma County in Colorado. Sweet guy, he's probably from Kansas. Tonight's next question comes from Lucille. She recently received the convalescent plasma treatment after she got COVID-19. That treatment takes the antibodies of someone who's recovered and gives them to a patient who's actively infected. And Lucille was wondering if she can get the vaccine after she got that treatment. Here's 9 Health expert Dr. Payal Kohli.
When you receive convalescent plasma, or actually even if you received experimental synthetic antibody cocktails, you have to be really careful about the timing of when you get the vaccine. Because if you get the vaccine too early, those antibodies from the plasma or from the antibody cocktails can actually reduce the efficacy of the immune response that's induced by the vaccine. So you want to not get it too early. At the same time, you don't want to wait too long because then your risk of reinfection goes up as your convalescent plasma and natural antibodies start to wane. So the CDC is recommending waiting at least 90 days after you receive convalescent plasma or synthetic antibodies before you get the vaccine.
90 days, Lucille. This is not the first time that your generosity has broken the internet, but you broke it real good last night. So many of you tried to give to this week's Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign that you took the nonprofit's site down for quite a time. It's back. So here's what we're working on together this week. WeCycle is a nonprofit that makes sure that families in need in the Denver metro area are able to get baby diapers, wipes, other essentials for little kids so that people aren't doing desperate things like rationing diapers or using plastic grocery bags and toilet paper in lieu of diapers. You fought through those internet issues and you raised $48,000 for that nonprofit last night. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491 and let's see if we can get them over the $50,000 mark for that important work. Fingers crossed that the interwebs can take the overwhelming weight of your generosity tonight. Listen, bottom line is this. A baby without clean diapers is a fussy, screaming baby, which means tired and stressed parents day after day, and we all know how that can end up in some bad places. So you want to talk about how to make an impact? This is something we can do to help. Thank you so much. Everyday investors figured out how to beat Wall Street giants at their own game this week. So the Wall Street power players shut down the game today.
It's kind of like outsider trading is illegal now.
Small-time traders in Colorado were the ones punished for figuring out a way to win. Tell you what, this sounds like a recipe for burnout in any job.
From March until October, I worked 6 days a week and only had taken off maybe a couple of weekends in the summer.
Especially if the job is helping other people take care of their mental health. That's next. You know the classic story of Robinhood, taking from the rich, giving to the poor. You probably know a bit about today's Robinhood, that stock trading app, the one that small-time investors used, among other things, to band together and to take some money from the rich, essentially by betting on companies that hedge funds were betting against. Then the modern-day Robinhood shut down the trading before the rich could get squeezed anymore today. That's likely to lead to a congressional investigation. The consequences are a lot more immediate, though, for those small-time investors, like a guy in Lakewood who told our Marshall Zellinger, He was just hoping maybe he could buy a home.
In this story, GameStop is in the middle of a game that somewhat stopped today.
It's kind of like outsider trading is illegal now.
Nick Kosmic joined the game when he invested in GameStop, not necessarily based on a conversation with his financial advisor, but because of, Reddit.
Just like anything, like you get on Reddit and you kind of fall down some wormholes, and then all of a sudden you're trading GameStop in a short squeeze, like dealing with options where 5 months ago I had no idea what any of it was.
If you have no idea, follow along with this simplified graphic from National Public Radio. Consider hedge funds the short seller, which borrowed shares of GameStop and sold them at one price, hoping to buy them back at a lower price, return the shares, and pocket the difference. Success requires the stock price to fall. A group on Reddit got investors to buy, causing the stock to soar. They make money while the hedge funds appear to have hedged their bets. Until today, when certain investment apps, like Nick's Robinhood app, prevented him from buying, only allowing him to sell.
So I was just kind of saving bits and pieces from paychecks. I really don't want to get into numbers of what I have, but I was trying to save up for a down payment on a house.
Can what happened today be seen as yet another bailout for the big guy?
I don't see it as a bailout at this point. I don't know why the brokers, why Robinhood or some of the other TD Ameritrade limited the purchases, and that's something we've got to investigate.
Democratic Congressman Ed Perlmutter sits on the Finance Committee that could hold hearings and ask questions about what happened today.
I always talk about Mrs. McGillicuddy. So, the lady that lives down the street, and is she being treated fairly? And the gentleman that you spoke to who, this is pretty, it's gambling to some degree, but the gambling rules changed late in the game, and he was left holding the bag.
I have money in, I know what my risk is, and I've accepted that risk, and I want to keep going forward and making these trades. And they're using their pull, the hedge funds, to not allow me to make trades.
The app Robinhood put out a statement today saying they've got federal securities rules to follow and that today's restrictions were not at the direction of any one group. I reached out to Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper. His chief of staff was an attorney for Robinhood, senior counsel of public policy. I wanted to know if this was good public policy, what happened today. His chief of staff has recused himself from this topic, and Hickenlooper has not been assigned to any committees yet, but he didn't ask to be on the banking committee, Kyle, which would be the committee that would overhear or hear something like this.
Oh, it seems like kind of a waste to hire Robinhood's lobbyist as your chief of staff and then not get on the banking committee. But anyway, can I just say I appreciate the perspective of the gentleman in Lakewood that you talked to, where he's not bragging like, oh, I made big money. He was just like, yeah, I was saving a little bit out of paychecks and I was trying to make something happen. Like, that's kind of the way that most Americans hope they can participate in the stock market.
Oh, sure. And I've been struggling with understanding this. And his is a good example, someone that's trying to do good on a small scale. But then you look at the larger picture. Who's virtuous in this? Is it the hedge fund that's betting on a company to fail? Or is it the local investors that are trying to mess with the hedge fund owners while trying to make money themselves, but also throwing the system into a tailspin? It makes my head spin. I'm glad I'm not in finance, but I think I kind of digested it today.
For anybody who is concerned, Marshall didn't lose his shirt in this. He chose not to wear a button down today. We'll be right back.
We know 6 different people that have passed from COVID, so it's in your face all the time.
While doctors and nurses are up close and personal with the physical toll of the pandemic, therapists are right there witnessing the mental cost. And it's starting to pile up for them. They'll talk it out with us next. Coloradans who connected with therapists over the last year sure had a lot to unload. The pandemic, financial stress, politics, the reckoning over racial justice. Think of all of the weight taken on by the professionals who help Coloradans manage their feelings. Our photojournalist Austin Knox heard from therapists who are fighting burnout.
Stress is when you're experiencing something in your life, but it's short term and it goes away and you know there's an end in sight. And then you get to burnout, which is the chronic physical and emotional exhaustion resulting from stress.
COVID, political turmoil, social isolation, and it's like, how do we do this? But we have to.
My name is Dr. Cheryl Ziegler. I'm a child therapist.
Patricia Oliver, and I'm the director of Oliver Behavioral Consultants.
It's not just the ability to be able to take care of all the clients that we work with, but also take care of ourselves.
And then is that frustration that we can't really do our jobs as effective as we usually can.
They're holding the weight of, their patient or their client. And then they're also dealing with so much of their own personal things. We're dealing with the same exact things as what people are sharing with us, but we have to compartmentalize that.
We're social beings. That inability to be with one another and support one another in a closer way has been really, really hard for me.
The problem is when it's like 15 to 20 sessions a week in which what you're hearing you can relate to, that's when it starts to become really difficult to fight off the burnout.
You need to figure out a way to leave that personal impact that you have from the situation on the side and focus on what is that we need to do. Finding that support for yourself to make sure that you can overcome what we have lived in 2020. It's critical.
For me, connecting with people energizes me. And so whether that's connecting with the team that I work with, or it's connecting with friends or my family, just being able to, again, be real. I have not, I don't always walk around like, oh yes, I have this all together. So when I have my moments, I just feel it quicker probably than other people do. And I do something about it.
After an extremely mild day in the mid-50s, the clouds and the cooler temperatures sweeping across the metro area tonight. High pressure still around, so we'll stay dry for the next 24 hours. But we're watching this next storm system pushing across northern California, bringing the mountains heavy snow and the coastline some drenching rains. Here in town, we'll be looking at a quiet evening for you. A dry start to your Friday morning. Temperatures once again feeling good. But out to the west, we'll be watching that snowfall beginning to push back into the state. Right now, it looks like several inches stacking up as we head toward the weekend. Great news for skiers and snowboarders. Tomorrow, extremely mild. Daytime highs back to the upper 50s here in Denver. Across the eastern plains with 30s and 40s up in the mountains. We could potentially see a quick flurry early Saturday morning. I wouldn't count on much. We stay mild until next Wednesday, when we'll see a bit more snow here in Denver.
Viewer named Dave writes in all the time, and he always said, you know what, we'll do it after the break. Tonight's Word of Thanks site is slow but not broken, is what I am told. You have overloaded it again with your generosity, but it is not broken. Kate says donated with a happy heart. Babies need all the help we can give, and parents have a tough job. Let's make it better. That's what this opportunity provides, Kate wrote. Chance to make things better. Dave writes in quite frequently and always with the exact same message to inform our next team that he does not watch our program and that he watches MASH at 6 p.m. Dave, I'm starting to think that you can't quit us. MASH is a good show too. You're welcome to watch that. We'll see you next time.